Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know how it is, right? You're killing it when it comes to understanding English, reading articles, watching movies, all that. No problem. But then when you try to actually speak, it's like your tongue gets tied in knots.
Oh, yeah, totally, like, your brain just freezes up.
It's super frustrating, right?
Yeah.
So we're diving into some research today that's going to help us crack the code on this. Not only why it happens, but also what we can actually do about it. Practical stuff to become more confident speakers.
That disconnect between understanding and speaking is something I hear about all the time. And the research actually shines a lot of light on what's going on.
So lay it on me. I'm ready to bust some myths and get some actionable tips.
What does the research say about why we get stuck?
Well, think about it like learning an instrument, like piano. You could listen to Mozart all day, but does that make you a concert pianist?
Okay, I see what you're getting at. Listening isn't the same as playing. Right, it's the same with language. We spend so much time on input, listening to podcasts, reading, watching stuff, that we kind of forget about the output, the actual speaking practice.
So it's like having a car full of gas, but never actually driving it. You have the knowledge, but don't use it.
Exactly. The
Mhm.
research really emphasizes that imbalance between input and output. We need to prioritize speaking more.
Makes total sense. But there's also the fear factor, right? It's scary to make mistakes, sound silly, or just not be understood. I know that holds me back sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Fear is a huge barrier for so many learners. But think about it, we all make mistakes when we're learning anything new, like when you're learning to ride a bike.
Yeah, you're not going to learn without a few scrapes and bruises.
And those scrapes and bruises with language, they're actually valuable feedback, helping us improve.
So, how do we get over that fear and just start talking more? Because I know I get stuck translating everything in my head before I speak, and it makes everything sound so awkward.
That's the translation trap. It's super common. But the research dives into exactly why that doesn't work well with English.
Oh, I'm all ears. Tell me more.
Languages have their own rhythms and ways of putting sentences together. Trying to force one language's structure onto English, well, it just doesn't flow naturally.
It's like those shape sorting toys,
Yeah.
trying to jam a square block into a round hole.
Perfect analogy, like I'm going to the store, sounds natural in English, but if you try to translate that directly from another language, it might sound totally off.
So, if we shouldn't translate in our heads, what should we do?
Well, ideally, we'd think in English, but that takes practice. One source had an interesting suggestion: talk to yourself.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Like full on conversations with myself in the mirror.
Not necessarily, but the idea is to get comfy, vocalizing your thoughts in English, describe your day, summarize what you're reading, anything.
So it's about creating low pressure opportunities to just speak without worrying about being judged.
You got it.
Yeah,
And the more you do it, the more natural those English rhythms and patterns will become.
makes sense. The research also had this cool idea called the 3.7 rule, and it kind of blew my mind.
Ah, the 3.7 rule. Yeah. That one really challenges the way we usually approach learning a language.
So I'm usually trying to spend most of my time listening to and reading English, but this rule flips that, right?
Totally. Traditionally, it's like 70% input, 30% speaking. But the 3.7 rule flips it. Make speaking the priority.
That sounds intense, but I can see why it would work. If we want to speak better, shouldn't we focus on speaking more?
Right. It might feel intimidating, but the idea is to train your brain to prioritize output, thinking and reacting in English.
So it's not just about the time spent, but also about how we prioritize the different parts of learning. Speaking has to be the main event.
You got it. It's all about turning speaking into a habit.
I love this idea. But if you're starting out and feeling stuck, where do you even begin with all this speaking practice?
Well, one source had a really practical tip that works well with the 3.7 rule: learning phrases, not just words.
Oh, interesting. I always struggle to piece together sentences word by word. It feels so clunky.
It's like trying to build a house with no pre-made parts, right? You're
Yeah,
starting from scratch every time.
exactly. So with phrases, we're learning those pre made building blocks of language.
You got it. And they're already grammatically correct and natural sounding.
So instead of learning coffee, milk, and sugar, I'd learn the whole phrase, can I get a coffee with milk and sugar, please?
Perfect. You're equipping yourself to actually communicate in real situations.
It's like having a toolbox full of pre-assembled parts. So much easier than building from scratch every time.
Love that. It's all about being efficient, fluent, and expressing yourself without getting bogged down by grammar.
Okay, so we're ditching the mental translator, embracing the 3.7 rule, and loading up on phrases. But how do we know we're actually using them right? It's easy to think we're doing great when we're actually making a ton of mistakes.
You're so right. It's hard to be objective about your own speaking. That's why feedback is so important, especially the kind you get from recording yourself and listening back.
Oof, I gotta admit, I hate hearing my own voice.
Oh.
But I get why it's helpful. You can pick up on things you don't notice when you're just speaking,
It's like watching game footage to analyze your performance. You can see those little details you miss in the moment.
like pronunciation, rhythm, all those little grammar slip ups we make without realizing it.
Exactly. It's like being your own language coach.
Okay, this is awesome. But we've got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about how to actually get that speaking practice and, most importantly, how to find awesome speaking partners. All right, we're back. So, in part one, we talked about why it's so hard to speak English, even when you understand it. And we got some cool tips, like ditching the mental translator and learning phrases.
Right. And don't forget about that 3.7 rule.
Oh, yeah, that one's a game changer. But now let's talk about the elephant in the room, those nerves, the fear of messing up. How do we actually deal with that?
I hear ya. It's easy to say, don't be afraid, but actually feeling it is a whole other story.
Exactly. It's not like flipping a switch. So, what does the research say about overcoming those speaking fears?
Well, it's all about understanding the psychology behind it. One of the sources really emphasized changing how we think about mistakes.
Like, not seeing them as failures, but as learning opportunities.
Bingo! Think about a baby learning to walk. They fall down like a million times.
Yeah, but they keep getting back up. They don't just give up on walking.
Right. And with language, it's the same. Those mistakes are actually feedback that helps us get better.
So instead of beating ourselves up, we should analyze those slip ups and figure out how to improve.
You got it. And one source actually suggested something kind of radical: seek out those mistakes.
Wait, what? Intentionally make mistakes. That sounds crazy.
I know, right? But think about it. By putting ourselves in situations where we're more likely to make mistakes.
We're actually accelerating the learning process.
Exactly, like intentionally walking on a wobbly surface to improve your balance. You're pushing yourself and learning faster.
That's an interesting approach. So we're basically turning mistakes into challenges.
And when we do that in a supportive environment, like with a patient language partner,
Those mistakes become less scary and more like fun learning experiences.
exactly, it's all about shifting our perspective. And another big piece of this is not taking ourselves too seriously.
Oh, yeah. I know I get caught up in trying to sound perfect and then I just freeze up.
It's that fear of judgment, right? We're so worried about our accent, our grammar, all those things.
But honestly, most people just want to understand what you're saying, right? They're not analyzing your every word.
You're so right. We build up this imaginary audience that's judging our every mistake, but in reality, people are just happy to communicate.
So the key is to relax,
Yeah.
let go of that need to be perfect,
Yeah.
and just focus on connecting.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to do that is to find speaking partners who are supportive and understanding.
Speaking of speaking partners, we touched on this in the last part, but let's dive deeper. Where can we actually find these awesome people to practice with?
There are more options than ever these days. Language exchange is one of the most popular methods.
So I could find someone who's learning my native language and we can help each other out.
Yep. You practice English with them, they practice your language with you. It's a win win.
And there are so many online platforms and apps specifically for that, right?
Tons of them. And don't forget about social media. There are groups for everything, including language learning.
So I could join a group of people learning English and maybe find some speaking partners there.
Totally. It's a great way to connect with other learners and get support. And don't limit yourself to online connections either.
You mean like local meetups,
Yeah, those are great. Or you could just strike up conversations with people you meet in your daily life.
like at a coffee shop or asking for directions? It's like turning the world into your language learning playground.
I love that. It's all about being open to opportunities. But one thing to remember is that not every speaking partner is going to be a good fit.
Right. You have to find someone you actually connect with, like with anything else.
And the research actually had some tips for finding the right partners. Shared interests are really important.
That makes sense. If you're both into the same things, you'll have more to talk about. It'll be more fun.
Exactly. And the conversation will be more natural and engaging. Another important factor is personality.
So finding someone who is patient and encouraging, someone who won't make you feel bad about messing up.
That's the dream. Someone who celebrates your progress and makes you feel confident. Because language learning is a journey.
And it's much easier and more enjoyable when you have someone supportive by your side, someone to cheer you on.
Absolutely. And one source even compared it to dating. You might have to try out a few different partners before finding the one.
I love that analogy. It takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
You can just relax, enjoy the process of connecting, and see where it goes.
Exactly. It's all about finding those connections that spark your enthusiasm and make you excited to learn. But even with the perfect speaking partner and all the best strategies.
We still need to believe in ourselves, right?
Yeah.
If we don't think we can do it, we're never going to succeed.
You're so right. Mindset is crucial for language learning. And one source talked about developing a growth mindset specifically for learning English.
Okay, growth mindset. That sounds interesting. What exactly does that mean?
It's about changing your beliefs about your own abilities. Instead of seeing your language skills as fixed and unchangeable,
You believe that you can constantly learn and improve.
exactly. It's about embracing the challenges and believing that you have the power to overcome them.
So it's like, I'm not good at languages becomes I'm still learning and getting better every day.
Yes. And even though it might sound cheesy, repeating those positive affirmations actually works.
Really? How does that work?
Well, the research shows that affirmations can rewire your brain, creating new pathways that support positive self talk.
Wow. So we're training our brains to be more positive and focus on our potential.
Exactly. It's a powerful shift. Another key part of the growth mindset is focusing on your progress, no matter how small.
So those little victories we talked about earlier, like learning a new phrase or having a good conversation with a partner,
Those are the things to celebrate. And one source even suggested keeping a success journal to write down all those wins.
that's a great idea. It's like creating a tangible record of your journey.
And it's so motivating to look back and see how far you've come, especially when you're feeling discouraged.
Oh, yeah. Those little reminders can be huge for keeping you going. And one source even talked about sharing your successes with others.
Right. Tell your language partner, your teacher, even post about it on social media.
It's like building a whole support system of people who are cheering you on.
And when you share those wins, you inspire others too. It creates a positive learning community. But we've got to take another break. When we come back, we'll talk more about cultivating that growth mindset and making this whole language learning journey even more enjoyable.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive on speaking English. I'm so excited about all the amazing tips we've uncovered so far. Ditching that mental translator, the 3.7 rule, finding the perfect speaking partner, and now
Now, we're going to supercharge our progress with the growth mindset.
it's like we've prepped for this epic journey, gathered all the gear, but now we need the fuel, that inner drive to make it happen.
Okay, so we talked about the growth mindset a bit before, but let's really dig in, honestly. Sometimes my inner voice feels more like a saboteur than a cheerleader. Any advice on how to silence that inner critic?
Oh, that negative self talk is so common, especially when we're tackling something challenging like learning a language. But good news, the research has some solid strategies for transforming that critic into a champion.
Okay, hit me with those strategies. I need all the help I can get. First step is awareness. You got to notice those negative thought patterns when they pop up. You know, those, I'll never be good at this, or I sound so awkward thoughts.
Ugh, those are the worst, like little gremlins that sabotage your confidence.
Exactly. But once you spot them, you can start challenging them. Is this thought really true? Helpful? Is there any real evidence to back it up?
So it's like
Ah,
putting those negative thoughts on trial,
Uh,
cross examining them.
exactly. Often, when we really look at them, we see they're rooted in fear, not reality.
Okay, so we've challenged those thoughts. Now what? How do we replace them with something more positive and encouraging?
That's where affirmations come in. Those positive statements we repeat to reprogram our thinking.
So instead of, I'm terrible at speaking English, I could say, I'm learning and improving every day.
You got it. It might feel a little cheesy at first, but research shows that repeating those affirmations, it can actually rewire your brain.
So we're creating new neural pathways that support that positive self talk.
That's amazing. Right. And another powerful tool is celebrating our successes, even the small ones.
Ah, those little victories that keep us going. We talked about those earlier, right?
Exactly. Whether it's mastering a new grammar rule, having a great conversation with a partner, or just feeling more confident, celebrate it.
One source even recommended keeping a success journal to track those wins and those aha moments. What a great idea.
It is. It's like creating a physical record of your progress, a testament to all your effort.
And I think it's especially important to celebrate those wins when we're feeling stuck. It's easy to get bogged down by the challenges, but remembering those successes, it's like hitting the reset button.
Totally agree. And one source even suggested sharing your successes with others, your language partner, a teacher, a friend, or even on social media.
Love that. It's like building a whole cheerleading squad for your language journey. And when we share those wins, we inspire others too.
Absolutely. It creates this positive and supportive community where we can all celebrate each other and keep pushing forward.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive. I'm feeling so inspired and ready to put all these tips into action.
Me too. It's amazing what a little shift in mindset can do.
So, to everyone listening, remember, pay attention to that inner voice, challenge those negative thoughts, and replace them with affirmations that empower you. You got this.
And remember, celebrate every step forward, no matter how small. You're on an incredible journey. We believe in you.
That's all for this deep dive, everyone. Keep practicing, keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.